Okay, so I'm going to start. We do have lots going on as usual here in the room, but that's okay. So you might have noticed that we sort of had a theme this month on aging. Debbie started at the beginning of the month and did how our nutritional needs change as we age. So I thought I would finish out the month and talk about sort of the fitness things that pertain to aging. And I'm pretty sure that this is nothing that you guys don't already know or even do. But I always like to riddle my talks with cartoons. So every day I walk for 30 minutes, I drink 8 glasses of water, I eat 5 fruits and vegetables, but I'm still getting older. And of course, that's true. We're all doing that, right? We're all getting older. But the part we don't want to do necessarily is get old. But we acknowledge that we're probably going to get older. So yes, we're all getting older. And this is just a little schematic of age expectancy. And so the US is up here. So currently the average age expectancy of somebody in the US is about 82, 83, I think. And it's not the longest in the world. The places in Asia like Singapore and Macau, I guess, is another big city state in China has a long, people live till almost 90. That's just expectancy, life expectancy. I would embrace the aging process if I could lift my arms, wouldn't we all? Anyway, so normal aging is sort of inevitable. So it's changes that occur in our bodies as we age, and they're not because we got sick or we hurt ourselves. It's just because those tissues aged, they got older. And the trouble with that concept is that sometimes we lose function and we're losing our ability to do things, not because the cells got older, but just because we quit using them in general. So declining function makes us more vulnerable to becoming sick. And when you quit doing stuff, then you age faster because you've sort of lost that function. So there is just a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. Are we degenerating because we're getting sick, or are we getting sick because we're aging? And that's the part we want to basically forestall the best that we can, right? So a couple more cartoons. After all these years, I'm finally comfortable in my own skin. Maybe it's because my skin is a lot bigger than it used to be. And I really like this one. Rub this anti-wrinkle cream all over your mirrors. Okay, it won't remove the wrinkles, but you can't see yourself because of the cream on your mirrors. Makes sense. Okay, so the aging process is the fact that you're losing function in your cells, but research is showing that many of those changes basically can be delayed, prevented, and even reversed by how you eat, how you live, how you exercise, and how well you practice other healthy behaviors, which is what this program is all about, right? So our lifestyle is proving to have a great effect on the aging process. So this is how we should be all living, right? And that's a great picture. So some inevitable things that happen. So you do get a little shorter as your vertebrae kind of compress over time. Your extremities become thinner, your trunk becomes a little thicker. Interesting that your nose and your earlobes continue to grow throughout your life. But you've heard of that before, right? Maybe because your nose is still growing. Okay. Yeah. And when Debbie talked, she talked about how we do lose muscle mass or your lean body mass. And women lose a larger percentage of bone than men. And as this thing called your lean body mass is the thing that dictates your metabolism and how many calories that you need. So if your lean body mass is declining, then you're not going to need to eat as many calories to maintain it over time. So that's going to affect what's going on with this thing called your body composition, or the proportions of fat and muscle. And so if you just thought about it, when you're 30, maybe your caloric needs were 2,000 calories, and 75, it's probably about 2/3 of that. If you just sort of went through normal sedentary living and didn't do a whole lot to maintain your lean body mass, okay? So that means if you don't keep your activity up, keep burning calories, and you also don't start to eat less, you're obviously going to gain weight over time just because of this lowering of your lean body mass. So a bigger notion there that makes sense is to just maintain your lean body mass the best that you can. And I think you guys know how you do that, and we'll talk about that. So your bone density does kind of change, meaning your bones lose part of their mass over time. And many of people in our program have bigger issues with than others. So osteoporosis is not uncommon. Osteopenia, which is not quite osteoporosis, but it's basically declining bone mass, is an issue for many people, both men and women. And the thing that does help you maintain your bones, just like everything else, is using them. So if you do exercise where you're stressing your joints, stressing your bones, that's going to help maintain your bone density. So weight-bearing activities, which means you're carrying your weight. So you're walking, maybe you're running, but at least if you're walking and you're carrying your weight, or you're doing things that are helping maintain your bone density. That's why I think pickleball actually is an awesome activity that's going to help a lot of people in the long run. I don't think we have a lot of pickleball players here. I don't know.
Linda,
Yeah.
does the walking have to be a brisk?
No, it does not. It's, you have to be carrying your weight when you walk. Doesn't matter how fast you're going. So this is a picture that just talks about the life cycle of bone, showing that obviously when you're growing body, you're developing your bones and you're building your bone mass, and then you kind of hold on to your bone mass through most of your adult life, and then you start this decline in later life when your hormones change and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to show this picture to show, one, that yeah, we're all going to lose some of our bone mass over time if we're not doing stuff to stress our bones. And the other thing that's certainly worth noting is it certainly is helpful that you started off well, that you obviously, as a kid, drank your milk and built your bones, which is not an issue for you, but it might be an issue for your grandkids, right? So you want to make sure that younger people are doing the things that they need to do to develop an adequate bone mass to keep them, going throughout life. And milk's not as popular as it used to be, but it's still the concept of the things that you get out of milk, meaning the protein and the calcium, are going to help with your bone development. And so anybody with young people in their lives that are growing, you want to make sure that their bones are growing, right? So some things that happen with your strength. So you're strongest usually when you're in your about 30. And just like as you're going to be losing your muscle mass, you're going to lose your strength. So muscle atrophy is a combination of aging effects of the muscles changing, the nerve units changing, and the fact that you're not using them, right? Daily muscle loading means that you're doing stuff to use your muscles. So it's that whole concept of, if you want to hold on to your muscles, you need to use them, right? So this notion here, use it or lose it, you're going to see a lot in this presentation. So that's an important thing. To maintain your strength is what you want to do so that you don't have the decline that's supposed to happen just because you got older. And here's just an illustration of knee strength in men that were compared to people that kept doing strength training versus those that didn't. And obviously the blue guys, when they were 20s, they were stronger. And over time, even though they kept doing muscles, they still lost some strength, but they didn't lose nearly as much as the people that did nothing, right? So that's a notion that you want to do some strength training to keep your muscle mass up. And I thought this is just a funny concept. Your glutes are, your butt muscles. And so you really don't want your workout to be glute-free. So flexibility is another fitness parameter that fits into this picture. And so you've probably been aware of this, that you're not as flexible now as you were maybe 20 years ago. And part of that's because of changes, because your tissues are changing and your joints are getting stiffer, et cetera. You're losing elasticity around your tendons and joints. But again, those are things that will help you maintain your function if you can maintain your flexibility that's the best that you can. And so I have two notions here, the parts that sort of matter to maintain your flexibility. One is in your hip flexors and your hip muscles and your walking muscles, okay? So if you don't maintain the flexibility in those parts of your lower body, then that's going to ultimately affect your walking ability. And if you start taking, slower steps, shorter steps, you're basically affecting your balance perspective, and you're increasing your likelihood of falling down because of these lack of flexibility in maintaining your walking ability. And so evidence suggests that a stretching program for the front hip muscles, your hip flexors, is going to help your walking speed and ability. And those of you that participated with the PT students know that that's one of the tests that they did, right? They had you walk 10 meters and measured how fast you did. That was a thing they did. And that is part of this whole picture of is maintaining your walking function, because that's overall a better picture for you. And you might pay attention to this as you take your walks, you know, are your steps getting shorter? And obviously that's something that you have some control over. And maybe while you're walking, you could spend part of your time trying to take longer steps. And that's possibly one of the perks of walking on the treadmill, because then you're well supported and you have that ability to stretch your stride a little bit more as you're going. So those are just encouragements that you want to pay attention to your walking function and try to maintain it the best that you can. And that's here, this is the same notion, the step length. The more distance between your legs while walking, i.e. the longer your steps, the greater balance you're going to have. So pay attention to what your step lengths are. Please, is my encouragement there. The other thing that you've seen me do a lot of flexibility wise are activities that maintain this rotational ability, right? So rotating is a good ability that helps you in this functional notion. And I never thought about the fact that it's going to help your organs too, but I guess it kind of makes sense that you're stretching. So you're giving your stomach and your pancreas a little chance to move too. But you usually feel better if you get some of that tension out of your upper back. So there's relaxing benefits to that. And those of you that had the fun of watching me fall down, it's very helpful in a fall prevention mode to have this good rotational ability. So those are the two parts about flexibility that I'm strongly encouraging here. One is in your hips and two is in your torso, your shoulder, you're rotating. Huh? Exactly. Yep, you're right. So the flexibility helps you in the fall category in two ways. One, it's hopefully going to keep you from falling. And two, if you do fall, you're going to fall better. Okay. So here's sort of the cycle of what happens if you start to lose your balance, that you stagger more, so you start falling down. And then when you fall down, then you get scared of falling. And then because of this fear of your falling, you basically cut back on stuff, right? You quit doing things because, no, that's too big of a risk. I'm going to fall down if I try to walk over there. So you quit doing less. And then that just adds to the progression of the loss of your function. So you basically increase your ability to fall down more because of lack of use. So that's a negative cycle that you don't want to start. And part of the notion is things that are going on that affect your balance as you get older are many things. And so the fitness is one of them. Your ability to stretch, your ability to have strong muscles to hold you up, and also sensory things enter in too. Maybe you don't hear as well, you don't see as well. That's going to affect your balance as well. So those are all things to be mindful of, and those are the issues that are contributing to your balance function. And again, we spend a lot of time practicing on those to keep it up, right? Because we don't want to lose that ability to hold ourselves up. From a heart perspective, so that matters too. And so a lot of the activity that you're doing is, this cardiovascular stuff to keep your heart strong and your systems working well, to pump blood to your working muscles, etc. So your heart does change as it gets older. Your heart rate's not going to beat quite as fast when you're 80 as when you were 50, and it gets thicker and stuff. But along that notion, if you basically, like everything else, if you don't keep doing some sort of activity to stress your cardiovascular system, it's going to decline. And sort of the expectation or the observation is that most adults lose about 10% of their fitness level every 10 years. And that all relates to everything that's going on, not using your muscles, not using your heart's ability to process oxygen, etc. And the same notion, if you just kept your activity up, kept doing things, hopefully you're going to not decline at that same rate. And anybody know who that is? Who is that? Jack LaLanne, right? the guy who was towing barges in the water when he was 90, right? With his teeth. Huh? Is that right? Yeah. Amazing guy. Amazing. And he was little. He was a little guy.
Like 5'5".
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so just because you're older, you shouldn't expect that you're going to be in bad shape. Okay. So the whole notion is, again, to keep doing stuff to maintain your cardiovascular fitness. And we have lots of experience, from our days in the rehab world, that lots of times people have a heart attack, end up, compromised going through cardiac rehab, and then they kind of catch on that they should do stuff. So we know lots of people who are way more fit after having had a heart attack than they were before, just because they kind of caught on and realized that they needed to do stuff to maintain their fitness. And this is an old slide of mine that many of you have seen before, which just shows, this is the line here, that if you were the average person and followed the normal thing, that you're going to lose 10% of your fitness level every decade. That means if you're 30 and you're reasonably fit, you can do 10 of these things called METs. By the time you're 90, you're down to about less than half of your capacity of when you were 30. So that's the sort of the normal decline, 10% per decade, how you're going to progress in terms of your fitness level. So when you're down here with the functionality of 4 METs, that's still functional, but it's not very, okay? Compared to somebody who's was, as a younger person, way fit, could do a lot, and then stayed active so that they're declining at that 4% per decade, then they're going to, even though they're losing fitness over time, when they're 90, they're going to still be way fitter than had they not done stuff, or had they not done something earlier in life. Which then the encouragement here is, regardless of where you are in this age perspective, it kind of makes sense to, if you can, bump yourself up on the curve, right? If you're that heart attack patient who at 50 had a heart attack because you weren't in very good shape, but you caught on and you started doing stuff and you made yourself more fit, then basically you did a good thing. You bumped your fitness level up. And then if you keep your activity up, you basically have more room to fall, right? So it's a good thing. So the encouragement is that regardless of the age, you want to maintain your fitness the best that you can, keep your as high yourself on the curve as you can, so that you don't decline as much as might be otherwise if you did nothing. So you may or may not have ever seen this before, but do have some goals for kind of what you should be doing for exercise in this program or in life. Doesn't mean you have to do it here in our room, but so I've heard this notion that most days of the week, 5 days a week, you should do 30 to 60 minutes of something to get your heart rate up. And the what is less important than the what you did. Doesn't matter if you walked or biked or rode or swam. If you did something that made your heart pump harder, that's a benefit to you. It is going to help you in this long picture. And then the other encouragement, and these are the same as the CDC guidelines, that a couple days a week, it's really, really good if you can have some strength training in your life. And it's also really, really good if somewhere along the line you do some things to maintain your flexibility and your balance. And we've talked about that, I think. So you realize that's the whole function, is to maintain your function and your strength so that you can keep yourself up and keep going.
Linda,
And yes.
on that lap prior screen, the 30 to 60, you had 30 to, oops, yeah, right there. 30 to 60 minutes, is that per day or for the week?
Per day.
Oh, okay.
per workout. So that would be if you did it at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week, 150 minutes a week. Okay. So risk factors for losing function. And this is just a little take home note that, people mean well and they all want to help you. And the guy at the grocery store will carry your stuff out to the car. And so that's good. It's good to get help, but you have to be mindful that every chance you give somebody else to do something for you, that means you're not doing it for yourself. So well-meaning people want to help you, but you're going to be deprived of your ability to carry stuff if you let everybody else do things for you. So one of my encouragements is always to do as much for yourself as you can. And Tom will like this picture. This is a really old picture. Do you know who that is?
You.
Yes, this is me. Yeah. So you can tell this is an old picture, one, because that's a 1978 rabbit. And I have my groceries in paper sacks, which people don't do that so much anymore, right? But that's the notion. If you do for yourself the best you can, I'm always encourage you to carry your own groceries. Plus I don't have any gray hair in that picture. Do I? I have a couple. Anyway, so some mental stuff goes on too in this whole notion of getting exercise and getting older. So maybe some of us have already experienced this, that you have going to have some memory changes, some learning ability that you're not going to pick up as much as you did, and possibly our brains are getting smaller with time. And we all alluded to the fact that maybe your senses are changing. You don't see as well, you don't hear as well. Things might taste differently. So this is the one aspect of using it or losing it. It's not as, you can't necessarily help the fact that your ears are can't make yourself hear more necessarily. So you have to do your best you can to hold on to those functions, but sometimes that's what's going to happen. But the memory stuff is maybe something you have some control over. And I really like this notion that just be mindful that expectations do determine the outcomes to some extent. So if you expect your mental and physical ability to diminish, it probably will. So if you have the expectation that you're going to grow young and live longer, that's hopefully going to be true too. Well, that's basically the power of positive thinking, right? So it's not so good to go around thinking that things are going to get worse, because you're just going to enable them to get worse by that notion. So that's again where the power of positive thinking helps. And there's some self-limiting phrases that you're discouraged from using. So don't talk about having senior moments, or I'm not what I used to be, or thinking that you're old. I can't remember anything anymore. My memory is going. Getting older stinks. Everything was easier when I was younger. I'm over the hill. My best days are behind me. Things keep getting worse as I get older. So I'm not saying that some of these maybe aren't true concepts, but if you go around saying them all the time, you're basically just talking yourself into thinking that way. So that's why they're discouraged. And so regardless of their validity, repeating these notions only provides negative reinforcement to an aging stereotype. So again, power of positive thinking, be optimistic. And this is Henry Ford, whether they think you can or you think you can, you're right. So another notion that goes along into this notion of your mental outlook is keeping your brain going with a daily dose of gratitude, forgiveness, and humor. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things for which he has not, but rejoices for what he has. So you've noticed I like to be funny. And stimulating curiosity. Those are important also concepts for the notion of keeping your brain going. So learning new things. We spent a lot of time in mental games in here. So those are all activities. The Mahjong, I think, is wonderful that we're doing that now on Fridays, because that's a great mental exercise. So same notion that you got to use your brain, use it or lose it, certainly matters. And then just earlier this week, Elsa sent me this awesome article that I wanted to include here, which is just talking about leg strength and cognitive function. Okay, so emerging research suggests that there's a direct physiological link between leg strength and cognitive function. And it was a study that was looking at twins over 20 years and measuring their leg strength and their cognitive function. And the ones that kept their leg strength up basically hold on to their brain function better. And it kind of makes sense. And it's really just to hold the same notion of how exercise is helpful. So when you're using muscles and you're boosting blood flow, you're going to make blood flow go to your muscles. You're also going to make blood flow go to your brain. So that's going to stimulate, the brain factors that are contributing to your neurons, et cetera, reducing systemic inflammation, part of that whole feedback loop that contributes to your cognitive decline. I guess the insulin sensitivity also enters into this. that your brain's going to be better off if your insulin reaction is better. So basically, these are all things that happen with exercise that have positive effects in many regards, and so they have big effects on the brain as well. And why the part where the legs enter in, I think really just has to do with the fact that legs are big. It's a big muscle mass. So the leg houses the largest muscle groups. So basically, if you're doing things using your legs, you're basically doing things that's moving a lot of blood through your body, and that's a good thing, and it's going to help your brain in the long run. So weight-bearing movements generate greater neuromuscular action as well. And so the other things about leg exercises, especially if, was again, where they're going back to the pickleball, that, you know, there's a coordination factor there, there's a strength factor there, there's a flexibility factor there. So my prediction is that the pickleball players are probably going to hold on to their brain function better than people that don't play pickleball. Are there any pickleball players here? I don't think we have any in our program necessarily. We lost Carolyn Weiler, a great nurse, because she was too involved in pickleball in her community. At any rate, so that all goes on. So I obviously always encourage you to do some stuff for your legs at any rate, but now that Elsa sent me this article, I'm even stronger that. So you want to do leg exercises to keep your leg strength good, because you want to be able to get out of your chair, and you want to keep your brain going too. So it's all good stuff. I'm sorry, sir, but our memory upgrades are only available for computers. None of us have tried that trick. I have two little bios here that these are people that I admire that lived to be really, really old. Betty White was one of them, and she passed away in 2022, I think. Anyway, she was, high 90s when she passed away. And at my laughter talk, I sometimes talk about this TV show that she had called Off Their Rockers, which is still out there. You could find it on YouTube, which was a comedy show of old people pranking people, kind of like that camera show. I can't remember the name of that camera, Hidden Camera. So and that was a show that she did when she's in her 90s, this pranking show. It was just funny. And so admirable person. And another super admirable person who recently passed away is Jimmy Carter, and who lived to be 100, and just kind of an amazing guy who was our president, but he did way more after he was the president than while he was actually the president. So he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He published a lot of books, and he did stuff with respect to this Carter Center that he established, which was global health, conflict resolution, democracy, and he worked on eradicating diseases. And I think truly notable is that he kept teaching Sunday school well into his 90s. So that's kind of cool. And this is a picture that just, if you put this all into perspective of how you're going to use it so you don't lose it. And then this is sort of the norm for how life is. And this picture, this big cigarette here, is looking at the whole world, and way down here is the US, which is saying that, going back to that life expectancy, that the current trend is that most people, the expectancy is that people they make it, that if you made it to age 60, and then once you're at 79, you're doing okay, your function's okay, and then the last 5 or 6 years of your life is when people tend to be quote disabled. They need more and more help. They're in this declining stuff. And in the US, it's a little dimmer, that people make it to 76 and then spend about 8 years in this disabled category. Okay. So if you just thought about your own place on this spectrum, and are you going to be one of these quote disabled people when you're 80, 85, 90, 95? And if you are, that's a reality you might possibly have to face. But then the other thing that you have to face is how you deal with that. Who do you have to help you when you're in that disabled state? So those are good things to have sort of in perspective and a plan for, if you realize that you're going to spend your last years in this disabled state. And I'm guessing that our sense is that we would just as soon not do that, right? That we don't want to be disabled for 8 years, have other people taking care of us for 8 years. But again, it's all individual, and everybody has their own situations and be mindful of that, which is why the encouragements are to keep taking care of yourselves, to keep using it so you don't lose it, so that you don't have these 8 years of disability, your final segment of your living. And toward that notion, I'm sure you've seen these quotes before. Let me live until I die. Basically, if you did it right, you were held on to your function the longest that you could. And when it truly is your time to go, then you didn't have to spend 8 years in a declining disabled state where other people were taking care of you. So I think these are both just worthwhile quotes. Live before you die, and also live until you die. Basically, you want to go out strong if you're going out. So in summary, we're all gonna have some physical decline, but we want to delay that the best that we can. So we want to keep our flexibility up. We want to keep our strength up. We want to keep our cardiovascular fitness up, because those are the things that hold on to our health. And the mental decline fits into that as well. So you want to be using your positive outlook and your curiosity, and getting your gratitude and your humor in there. And again, you want to do as much for yourselves as long as you can. That's truly my encouragement. And the theme you've seen all along here is this: use it or lose it, right? So we're going to keep doing it, right? Okay. Comments or questions?
About arthritis.
Uh-huh.
And so how does exercise help with that, or can it? I mean, it's not going to make it go away.
Yeah, so Doty's asking about arthritis, and that's actually something I know a lot about.
Good.
Because I have a lot of it.
Me too,
Yeah.
lately.
And so arthritis is just joint pain, and older joint pain, you don't have a lot to do with, you can't control, right? So there's two notions there. One is, yes, you have to keep doing stuff. You have to keep moving. You have to keep those joints moving. So if you have arthritis and it hurts, you should try to move the best that you can. And it depends on where the arthritis is. And the other, you have to manage your pain. So if you can't take things for pain, which a lot of people in our category can't take ibuprofen and those kinds of things. So then you have to figure out what are the things that help you manage your pain, whether it's cold or hot or whatever it might be. You have to focus on that. I take a lot of baths, a lot of sit baths. And that makes me feel much better to just soak in a hot tub. So yeah, arthritis is a big part of most of our lives. Most of us have some arthritis somewhere. And again, yeah, you have to, you hurt yourself more if you just say, oh, I can't do that because my knee's going to hurt. I can't do that because my knee's going to hurt. I can't do that because my elbow's going to hurt. And maybe you shouldn't do that because it hurts your elbow. But what can you do to use other parts of your body so that you're maintaining the fitness around it the best that you can? Nick.
I recall when I was at cardiac rehab at UC Davis, I had arthritis in my elbow. And you were the one that told me continually do some exercise. We did,
Uh-huh.
and it's wonderful.
That's great.
It hurts to do it.
Yeah.
Kept working on it.
And didn't you, Ron, have a story how your shoulder got better because you started doing more with it?
Yes. More range of motion now. It still hurts a little bit when I go certain places, but yes, it's much better.
Right, right. Yeah.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Oh, with a fat one. She wants to know what kind of boat that is. It's a probably a Moss 24. So this is me rowing. I don't know if you figured that out or not.
Is that a single?
That's a single, something I don't do very often.
Much harder.
Yeah. But at any rate, rowing is a wonderful sport. And so rowing is good because it uses lots of muscles. It's very cardiovascular, but rowing is not weight bearing. Okay. So that's something to bear in mind, that if you're going to be a rower, what are you doing to augment that with respect to these other issues like lifting weights or weight bearing stuff for your bones. Anyway,
But on the other hand, you're pushing with your quads.
you're using your leg muscle. Yes, it's strength. Strength is very, yes, it's a good strength building exercise, but it's still non-weight bearing.
Add about the learning. Also, there's been research that shows that learning also contributes.
Okay.
It says specifically that trying to learn a musical instrument and language are two things that exercise parts of brains that basically we don't use much after we quit working.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a good way to stimulate those things. Now you have something else that you can, torture your.
Right, so Kevin is saying to resumers that learning a language or learning music are good things to keep your brain going. So what language are you learning right now?
I'm teach myself French.
Are you really?
Way.
Très bien, très bien.
That's the extent of it.
That's the extent of my French. Yeah, exactly. Adieu. I know that one too. Bon ami. I know. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.